Hey, how's it going, everybody? Any Pride here with Milk and Cookies Total War. Wanted to bring you all a replay of the High Elves. So today I will be using a High Elf army against Waaagh, who will be bringing the Orcs. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the High Elves in the tabletop and their faction roster in Call of Warhammer and show that off to you before we got into the actual battle. So the High Elves are one of the factions that I'm actually most excited to play as when Total War Warhammer officially drops. I'm really excited to play them because in the tabletop game they have a very unique roster and a lot of very interesting units. So lore-wise, I don't think they're quite as interesting as the Dark Elves from the Warhammer Fantasy or the Eldar from 40k. And I'm actually probably going to start doing a little bit of 40k content at some point. I don't know when. I've been looking at Dawn of War 2, and that game looks really interesting to me, and it's an old game. It's like 4 or 5 years old. But I was thinking of maybe picking that up and maybe doing a little bit of Dawn of War 2 content, because 40k is a very interesting universe. But with that said, High Elves, maybe not as interesting lore-wise as the Eldar are in 40k, but their unit roster on the tabletop game for fantasy is absolutely awesome, and I'm very excited to play them. I don't expect to see them until probably the third TW Warhammer game, maybe the second, but I think it makes a lot of sense to leave Lizardmen and Ulthuan and some of those the continents across the seas, basically, for the final Total War game for Warhammer. But they have a huge assortment of flying mounts and monsters, some really cool units. Apparently the Star Dragon for the High Elves is one of the strongest units in the entire tabletop game. They also have the Lothern Sea Cutter, which is like a Great Eagle. They have another Great Eagle unit, and they have a chariot that gets pulled by massive white lions. So very cool special units for the High Elves. And they also have a Frostheart Phoenix, I read, that is like a Phoenix, but it's basically just uses frost and winter abilities, which I think is pretty cool. But they're very interesting. They also have the Phoenix Guard, which I'm not going to be bringing in this battle. You can see them right here. They're heavily armored halberds. They are actually one of the strongest, maybe top 3 strongest units in the entire tabletop game. And it's interesting because in Medieval 2, halberds are very powerful, and in this mod, the Phoenix Guard are actually insanely good as well. So halberds are really good in Medieval 2 for a couple of reasons. And the biggest is that they have high armor piercing, so they can cut through really heavily armored units pretty easily. But they can also use Spear Wall, which is a very big deal. You can deflect a lot of charge bonuses that way and just kind of tank out and hold out in melee combat for a very long period of time. But maybe one of the most important things as well is that they kill infantry and cavalry alike. So it doesn't really matter what kind of unit you're facing, they're probably going to be able to cut them down in melee really easily, and they have that bonus versus cav, which is very important. I elected not to bring them in this game. As you can see, this is my roster. It's 3 Dragon Princes of Caledor, 2 Silver Helms, 2 White Lions, 2 Swordmasters, 5 High Elf Archers, a High Elf Mage, which we'll talk about a lot when we get down to the battle, and then 5 High Elf Spears. So the unit roster for the High Elves in Call of Warhammer is actually not super impressive. It's kind of bare bones. Doesn't have any of those monsters that you really want to see, like the Lothern Sea Cutter or the Great Eagle or any of those flying units, but it makes sense. Medieval 2 doesn't really have the capability to implement flying monsters very easily. So it's a little unfortunate, but either way, they do have some very cool, unique infantry units that can tank out and just kill a ridiculous amount of guys in melee combat. So I'm going to be going down to the battle now. Hope you all can join me, and I'll see you all on the battlefield. So down on the battlefield, we're going to get a better look at the High Elf roster. You got some Silver Helms and the Dragon Princes of Caledor on screen right now. Silver Helms are one of the fastest, I believe the fastest cavalry unit in the entire Call of Warhammer mod. And right next to them, the Dragon Princes of Caledor, which are top 2, top 3 cavalry unit in the entire mod. So what you're probably going to see across the board here is that the High Elves have some really high quality units. We got the White Lions of Chrace right there, and the Swordmasters. We got a main line of High Elf Spearmen in Spear Wall, which are very cheap actually, only 1,000 gold crowns, and in Spear Wall can tank out and fight in melee for a very long period of time. And they're actually only levy units, but they can kill a lot of orcs, and we're going to see that in this battle. And then we got the high elf mages right there, and some more cavalry over on my right flank. So across the way from me, we have the big Waaagh right there. We got some big orcons, some orc boar boys, some black orc destroyers, and black orcs in the back there. And then on each flank, my opponent has some orc boar boys, which I might have already mentioned, and he has some trolls, which are going to be scary when they get into melee. They cause a lot of havoc, a lot of destruction. I'm going to have to worry about those once melee begins in earnest. So some more boar boys over on this side, and then we're going to get into the battle. So what you're going to notice in a lot of these replays, these Warhammer replays, is I am generally on the high ground, and there's a reason for that. It's not because I'm a campy player. You guys have seen my playstyle. It's not a campy sit back and let my enemy come to me very often kind of playstyle. But in the Call of Warhammer mod, there are a lot of units like mortars and sorcerers that need time to shoot, and they have crazy long range. So if you want to give your special units the most amount of time they can possibly have to fire, I need to sit back and have the high ground. So that's what I've done a lot in these replays. The high elf sorcerers are 15,000 gold crowns. That's almost a third of my entire funds for this battle. I have to make sure that they do the amount of killing to justify their cost. That's why I'm sitting on that hill. Gives me a huge vantage point over the battlefield, gives me a really good line of sight as we see a bunch of orcs dying right now to the high elves. I'll talk about them in a second. But basically, just want to get that high vantage point, make sure they do a lot of killing. So, in this mod, the high elf sorcerers are arguably the best sorcerers in the entire game, the best magic casters. They basically throw Hadoukens, they throw fireballs that have a large AoE attack that kind of shoots out in a line, and they are very, very accurate and have very long range. Extremely good unit, already probably killed about 40 men of the orcs so far. So, Gojira's going to start out with an orc boar boy charge. He wanted to get the mages. I, of course, am not going to let that happen. So I'm going to deflect the savage orc boar boys on some spears, kill a couple of them, and because they're a low tier unit, they're going to rout. Probably only lost 5 or 6 men in that unit, but they're going to run away and then regroup with the rest of their army. What I've done is I've laid out my army on this hill with the high elf spears, the cheap only 1,000 gold crown spears in the front in shield wall. They're going to take the brunt of the orc charge. That's going to be very important because a lot of the orc units have really high charge bonuses, so I can't let them get good charges on my more important units. Certainly don't want them to touch my mages, but I don't want them to touch my cavalry or my sword masters off the charge. I would rather let them hit the spear wall. Now, some savage orcs are over on my left flank, and I'm going to get a downhill charge with the swordmasters. This is actually not very good what you see them doing right here. They're actually running through the loose formation that all savage orcs come in. All savage orcs in this game are in loose formation. They're not disciplined units at all. But you're going to see that my swordmasters actually run through and kind of get caught up in the middle of the unit. And that's really bad because swordmasters, with their two-handed weapons, attack slower than other units. So when they get surrounded by enemies, they don't get a very good chance to attack, and they can get cut down very easily. And they actually have lower defense than a lot of other units as well. So that unit is not going to actually do particularly well in melee, but my mages, my sorcerers right now are going to do amazing. The big orc boys are in the center right here, and the Hadoukens are going to do so much damage where they're clumped up. He doesn't want to charge into the cheap meat shields that are my high elf spears, even though I think he should have done that already. He doesn't want to do it because it wastes the charge bonus, and then he knows I'm going to follow up with the White Lions or some of my other higher tier units. But what he's done so far is expose himself to the fire from my high elf mages, and he's taken a lot of damage. I sounded really drunk when I said mages right there. It was like slurred words, I don't know why. But my White Lions are going to go into melee now with their two-handed axes, and then my Silver Helms are going to charge in from behind. Not a great charge, the rocks kind of deflected the charge there, and the Silver Helms aren't going to do great against the 2 hit points of the Black Orcs either, so I'm actually going to lose quite a lot of that cavalry unit if I leave them in melee. But the Calvary Battle is beginning in the back there against the Orc Boar Boys, and over on the left flank, another one of my Silver Helms charged in to the Boar Boys as well. So, again, not a good charge bonus. Rocks, again, deflecting a lot of my charge bonuses and making it a lot harder for me to get the big charge off. That's actually that's very good for the orcs, because the orcs don't have a huge charge bonus with the boar boys, but they are better in a kind of grinded out melee fest than the Silver Helms. Silver Helms need that charge bonus to do really effective in melee combat because they're light cavalry. So, see some more big guns in there in melee against my White Lions, and all across the line I do have the high ground, which is important, of course, in Total War. It means that my White Lions and my Swordmasters got downhill charges, which is going to be pretty important in this melee grind. And you can see my sorcerers actually aren't shooting at the moment. If you don't hear that sound, that kind of weird whooshing sound, they're not actually firing, even if you see their arms move forward. But there's a large group of Savage Boys and Big Guns right here that got ravaged by the Hadoukens. So, really good line of sight there. They're not firing right now because Medieval 2, the units, if they don't have line of sight, will not fire no matter what you tell them to do. So, main line of High Elf Spears doing a very good job of tanking this melee engagement, making sure that the Orcs can't cut through particularly easily. And hell, if they died right now, they've already done their job. They held down the main line and made sure that they didn't charge more higher value targets. But they're actually killing a lot of the Orcs, which is very important for me. It's a very good thing that my cheap High Elf Spears and Spear Wall are so powerful. It's interesting that the Dark Elves don't have Spear Wall on their spears in this game, and it means that the High Elves, that in and of itself, are actually probably a lot better. Because Spear Wall, I don't know what kind of bonus it gives you in this game, but I know that if you try a melee engagement with Spear Wall and without it, the one with Spear Wall just does infinitely better. Shield Wall, I guess I should say Shield Wall, does infinitely better, like, which is way, way, way better. So I know there's a huge stat bonus, kind of hidden stat bonus there that helps a lot. Cavalry fight on this flank, not going very well for me. The Dragon Princes of Caledor didn't get a great charge bonus off, and the Trolls are in there, so I really don't have a great chance of winning that engagement. But I did notice that there was a huge gap in the center of the Orc formation, and that's going to allow one of my Dragon Princes of Caledor, which, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the strongest cavalry units in the entire mod and in the tabletop game as well. It's going to allow me to pull them through and start back charging some of these Black Orcs. Once that happens, it's going to be really big for me because these Black Orcs are actually 2 hit points, and if you can rout them from the field very quickly like you can with a huge charge bonus from a cavalry unit, that just is a very, very big point swing right there. It's gonna free up a lot of my units and allow me to take this battle a lot easier. So huge charge there, probably killed 20 or 30 men off of the charge on a 2 hit point unit. They're dropping like flies at this point, and that unit's gonna rout very, very soon. And I'm gonna just pull out and cycle charge again. Now, I didn't want to go into this unit because I knew that at this point that Black Orc unit was pretty much out of commission. Like, they're not gonna do very well in melee from that point on. Probably going to rout pretty soon. So I'm going to pull them out and actually go for another point in the line, but I'll show that in a minute. The Trolls actually almost got into my mages right there, which was a little scary. But I didn't notice it because I was microing with my cavalry. So trying to tie them down with my Dragon Princes, and they keep trying to pull out. And I actually was focusing on my cavalry unit right here, and I saw those routing units, the other Black Orcs that I just routed with the hammer and anvil. I didn't want to charge right away because that would the blocking or the routing units would block my charge. So I wait for them to pass by, and then I charge in to this other Black Orc destroyer unit. And again, going to be very, very devastating. Probably going to be 20 or 30 men killed off the charge, and then of course the huge morale penalty means that that unit will rout quite soon. So in the center and on my right flank, crushed them. Didn't win the cavalry fight convincingly. Unfortunately, I lost a very expensive unit with the Dragon Princes of Caledor and the Silver Helms, which was unfortunate, but I have broken the Orcs' left flank and killed his general right there, as you can see. Things are going pretty well for me. Balance bar started out very much in the Black Orcs' favor just because they outnumbered me, but at this point, back to even strength, and even strength on the balance bar in Call of Warhammer if you're High Elves versus Orcs, quality versus quantity. Quality, if you have the terrain advantage, which I do in this game, generally going to win you the battle. The Trolls here are going to actually charge out of melee and destroy my mages. And I didn't see it until he charged, and then I caught the last glimpse of it. Didn't have time to pull them out. Was very sad about that, because if you let the sorcerers shoot all of their ammunition, I haven't even gone through like a quarter of the ammunition of maybe like I've shot a quarter of the ammunition for the sorcerers so far. If you give them time to shoot all their ammunition, your army will be dead. There won't be anything left. So, it was unfortunate that I let my mages die there. It was just bad micro. I didn't see him. It was too late when he charged in. I lost them. I could have probably killed another 1,000 men easily with the amount of ammunition that I had left in that unit. So, 2 of them are going to get away. So, that's a little bit of killing power right there, but would much rather have 10. It was just a micro mistake and a good play from Gojira there to charge them. Things are still shifting ever more in my favor, though. The trolls are really his only saving grace at this point. He has 2 almost full strength units. He's lost 3 trolls in that unit, and I think the other one is full strength, the one that was fighting in the Calvary Battle. But things are going very well for me. Charging with my White Lions here. Got the White Lions on their head. Very cool looking unit with those 2-handed axes. I've never really considered a axe as a elf kind of weapon. In Middle-earth and in Lord of the Rings, you never see the High Elves use 2-handed weapons like that. You see them use spears and more. You don't see them use the blunt trauma kind of weapons. So I think it's interesting that in Warhammer, some of the elves actually use stuff like halberds and axes, because I wouldn't really associate that kind of weapon with the more civilized quote-unquote elves. But it's cool. I mean, they're one of the coolest units in this mod for sure. I really like their model there. Just killing some routing units, and things shifting ever more in my favor. And at this point, just the trolls in melee combat. I don't think there are any other orcs on the field. And you can see, I mean, the balance board, it still says he has a chance to win. That's how strong trolls are. They've got 30 attack, very high armor piercing, and 7 to 10 hit points. I'm not sure, somewhere in that range. I don't know how good they are compared to chaos trolls or minotaurs, but they're on that kind of level where they can very easily kill 2 or 3 full units of elite troops if left unchecked. And just a few trolls left on the field. I think there are maybe 2 or 3 in that unit right there, and then 7 or 8 in the other. But it's just going to be a grinded out fest from here on out, and I'm just going to cut that out because it's cool seeing them throw stuff into the air, but it takes a while to kill them. So, see the last one die right there. And that's your battle. High Elves take the field. Biggest thing in that battle was my positioning. I think that the geography was very, very important. Let my High Elves take the charge bonus of the Orcs, and then I followed up with the more elite units, the White Lions, and the Swordmasters, and got some really good hammers and anvils off with my Dragon Princes of Caledor. So, actually ended up killing about 2,000 men, lost around 900, and the High Elf mages got 300 kills, which is quite good. They were actually, a lot of those kills were on big guns, which have 2 hit points, which is impressive. You're getting 300 kills on 2 hit point units. Very good. And then, across the line, I got 150 kills or so on my Dragon Prince of Caledor, one of those units. Other one didn't do so well because they got tied down with trolls and savage boar boys. But a lot of my units did very well. Some of my archers got over 100 kills and very few losses. I didn't talk about my archers in that battle at all, actually, and I should have. They were very important for me. It did a lot of killing. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you all later. Andy Pride signing out.